Welcome back to Ms. Pariseau and Mrs. Achilles video series. Today we are talking about compound interest, and we've got this scary looking but not that hard to use formula. So our formula here is going to give us a future amount. So basically, if you put money into a savings account and it's got a compounding amount of interest, this formula can tell you how much money you're going to have in that savings account after a set number of years. So the formula, which you do not have to memorize, but you do have to know what all of the parts are. The formula is A equals P times the quantity 1 plus R over N, all of that raised to the N times T power. So A, right here, A equals, A is going to give you the future amount including interest. P is your principal amount. In other words, if you put a set amount into an account and it has a certain interest rate, the A value is going to be what you have after a certain amount of time. The R that we see right here is the interest rate. Now be sure to express that as a decimal, okay? N, right here, is the number of times the interest is compounded per year. So you'll see we'll do a couple of examples, but if something says it's compounded annually, that's 1 time per year. If something is compounded every month, that's 12 times per year. If it's compounded every day, that's 365 times per year. So N is the amount of times the interest compounds per year. Then T is the number of years, this T right here, the number of years your money is invested or borrowed if you're talking about a loan. So, and that will be given to you in the problem. Let's look at an example so this can be a little clearer. Before we do that, pause the video if you need to make sure you have all of this in your notes. Again, you do not have to memorize this formula, but you have to understand what all of the letters represent. Pause the video now. Welcome back. Here is an example that we can use the compound interest formula with. So, if an amount of $5,000 is deposited into a savings account at an annual interest rate of 5%, compounded monthly, how much is in the account after 10 years? Well, here's our formula, and as you can see, we have all of the information that we need to plug into the formula. So, P, our principal amount, is the starting amount. We're starting with $5,000 and putting that into our bank account, so that's our P value. R is our interest rate. There's R right here. Remember, we want that interest rate expressed as a decimal, so 5% becomes 0.05. N, remember, is the number of times it's compounded per year. So this says compounded monthly, which means 12 times in a year. And T, finally, is the number of years we're investing the money. So you can see that T is 10. So we have all of our values, and now we're just going to plug them into our formula. Okay, so now we're going to plug those numbers that we identified from the problem on the previous slide into our equation. So you can see where P of 5,000, we're putting that value in, 1 plus our rate of 0.05 divided by N of 12, raised to the N times T. Now, when you are typing this into your calculator, it's very important. Type 5,000 times, and then open parentheses, 1 plus another open parentheses, because whenever we have a fraction, we need to make sure we're putting it in parentheses in our calculator. So, open the parentheses there, 0.05 divided by 12, close the parentheses for that, and then close the parentheses for the 1 plus this fraction. Then we're going to raise it to a power by using that little caret symbol that you find just below the clear button on your calculator. And then we need parentheses again to tell it to take that 12 times 10 and multiply it together before it applies the exponent. Because you know calculators like to do exponents before multiplication. So we have to tell it to multiply first. If you've typed all that in and hit enter, you should get the answer of $8,235, and we're going to round that to 5 cents. All right, we have one more example for you here. So go ahead and try using the formula and plugging this into your calculator. If you start a bank account with $10,000 and your bank account compounds the interest quarterly, think about how many quarters there would be in a year, at an interest rate of 8%, how much money do you have at the end of a year? So pause the video now, use the formula to enter this into your calculator and see what our balance is at the
So
end
Miss
of the year.
Achilles, for the interest rate, I should put 0.8, not 8%, right?
Is 0.8 equal to 8%, Ms. Pariseau?
I thought it was. It's not?
0.8 would actually equal 80%, so you want to make sure you put 0.08.
Oh, I have to move the decimal over 2 places. I always forget that.
Don't forget. All right, so this is what we're going to put into our calculator this time. 10,000 times, open parentheses, 1 plus another open parentheses, 0.08 divided by 4, because the number of times this interest is compounding is quarterly, and there are 4 quarters in a year. Close parentheses again. Now we're going to hit our little caret button, parentheses again for 4 times, now how many years? 1 year, so 4 times 1, and close parentheses. You may be thinking, you don't really need to type 4 times 1 in your calculator, and it's true. I just think it's a good idea to type it in so you get in the habit of remembering that you know you've got n times t and you don't forget about that. Let's type all that into our calculator. When we push enter, we should get that the amount of money at the end of the year is going to be $10,000, $10,824, excuse me, and 32 cents. So hopefully you came up with that answer for our example.
Okay, so now we can see the whole problem, so you can make sure you have that copied down correctly. So make sure you got the right answer, and if you have questions, of course, you can ask us tomorrow in class.
Thanks again for watching. Bye.